How many genders are there? I get this question a lot because apparently I'm pro-science, which means I guess a lot of people are anti-science, and the question is frequently put to other posters on my channel. For anyone in the rest of the world who may be wondering what all the fuss is about, this has become a huge deal in the United States.
Are you dressed up? Are you a man? Are you a man pretending to be a woman?
I'm not pretending to be anything. I'm just dressed.
What do you think about my son, who might think that he can put on makeup and put on fancy clothing and high heels and have his penis cut off and take estrogen so he can grow fake boobs like those? Yeah, this is so degrading.
Yeah, what if her son has his penis cut off? Ever thought about that? And why is a man dressed as a woman being berated by a woman dressed as a man? Obviously, this video is going to delve into the murky world of, well, sex. So I'll have to be careful I don't stray into any double entendre, which would sully this serious scientific look at the issue.
Do you know, I haven't done this since I was in the army, at a camp concert.
I'll try hard not to slip one in. Oh! Matron! I've been collecting these posts for a while with the idea of making a video to clear up the confusion. Because, of course, gender has nothing to do with science. It's a linguistic and social term. But while I was nearly finished with the video, news came in of this executive order from the White House, so I've just got time to include it. It's pretty clear that the executive order and all these posts are confusing gender with sex, which is a scientific term. Now, whether there are more than two sexes, we'll come to that in a minute. Not surprisingly, when I check my science dictionary, the word gender isn't in there. It's not in my biology dictionary either. So where did the word gender come from, and what does it mean? It derives from the Latin word genus, meaning a type. In Old French, that was rendered as genre, which passed into Old English as gender after the Norman conquest. It came to mean a type or a sort. Shakespeare used the word twice, each time with that meaning. But it was most commonly used to describe different types of nouns. Some European languages had 3 genders, like German and Russian. Others, like French, Italian and Spanish, had 2. There was no sexual connection with most of these gender assignments. After all, in French, the noun masculinity is feminine, and a vagina is masculine. But because masculine and feminine were attached to grammatical types, or genders, the word gender became associated with male and female. These days, the term gender is mostly used as an adjective to describe men who are attracted to women but like to dress as women, and women who are attracted to men but like to dress as men, and men who are attracted to men and like to dress as women, and you get the picture. By the way, if you think all that's a bad influence on kids, you're going to love the British tradition of Christmas pantomime.
Hello, everybody!
Yeah, this is how British children have celebrated the birth of baby Jesus since the Victorian era, cheering on a hero known as the principal boy, who's a woman playing a man, with comic characters being men dressed as women. And, of course, the principal boy, played by a woman, has to have a romantic relationship with the principal girl, played by a woman. Now, put like that, I suppose it all does sound a bit eccentric. But this is a Christmas tradition for children that goes back over 100 years, and even Princess Elizabeth played the role of principal boy, making her the only cross-dressing female ever to become a queen.
Oh, no, she wasn't.
Oh, yes, you're right. French Queen Marie Antoinette was also a cross-dresser. So why do people think this has anything to do with science? Again, because people are confusing gender with sex. Now, sex is science, so if you want to know how many sexes there are, well, according to biology, there are 2, male and female. But surely I must believe there are more than 2. After all, here's a guy who's done his own research. Well, turns out you can't always trust what people who take pride in doing their own research tell you, especially when it comes to things I said or think or believe. If we follow the science, which this poster hasn't, then according to human biology, males are defined as producers of small sex cells, while females are defined as producers of large sex cells. The problem with the scientific definition is that some men can't produce sperm and some women can't produce eggs. So, to make the definition more robust, there are other characteristics that distinguish the sexes. Women generally have 2 X chromosomes and a uterus. Men generally have 1 X and 1 Y chromosome and a penis and testes. Hang on, never mind what YouTube says, I've got a picture of that here. Sorry, that's the best I can do, but it's in there somewhere. If someone has a combination of all these characteristics, which are based on what we can see, then he or she can fairly be described as biologically male or female. Before modern technology came along, doctors traditionally assigned the sex of the baby according to the visible genitalia. Any baby born with a penis was a male, and a baby born without one was designated a female. When ultrasound came along, it did the same thing. That designation is what goes on the birth certificate, and for hundreds of years that's how conservative and religious groups have preferred it. You go with the sex that's on your birth certificate, and you can't change it.
It's a birth certificate, and it's binary. You can only be male or female.
Now, if the world had been created by a loving God who intelligently designed everything, we'd all fit easily into one of these 2 categories. Unfortunately, the reproductive system hasn't been intelligently designed. It's a messy chemical process. Sometimes babies have a barely visible micropenis and a small opening underneath that looks like a vagina. Sometimes female labia look more like a male scrotum, and vice versa. So a baby girl can be mistaken for a boy and a boy for a girl. Sometimes a baby can have both a uterus and testicles. Sorry, again, YouTube won't let me show you photos. Often these anatomical traits are in conflict with the presence or absence of a Y chromosome, so it's entirely possible for a baby to be born legally a female and yet turn out to be biologically male because she has a Y chromosome. Even the chromosomes themselves are often not distinct. Thousands of babies are born every year with an extra X chromosome, which still makes them anatomically male, but with a reduction of what are regarded as male characteristics, like a low sperm count and low levels of testosterone. More rare is a condition with 3 or 4 chromosomes, causing even fewer male characteristics, and breast enlargement. Some babies are born with 2 Y chromosomes, and so on. So yes, there are only 2 sexes, male and female, but it's analog, not digital. Sex is more like an artist's palette, where the colours sometimes get mixed as they're applied to the canvas. So, for that nebulous area between male and female, biology uses the term intersex. Now, that's not a third sex, it simply defines the status of people who are biologically in between male and female. So if you're confident that you're an authority on what classifies men and women based on a political or religious position, here's a pop-up quiz question. If a newborn baby is determined to be female and has female written on the birth certificate, but later turns out to have XY chromosomes, which one determines the sex?
If only there was a scientific way to differentiate between men and women, and we're very open to listening if someone could come up with a way, and all of this was already known,
a chromosome test.
documented.
Like a chromosome test.
So according to Sky News Australia, a Murdoch network that's our version of Fox News, sex is determined solely by chromosomes. Okay, question number 2 then. Should a woman be allowed to change the sex she was born with and legally become a man if it turns out she has the XY chromosome? Obviously, Sky News would be in favour of that, right?
It's a birth certificate, and it's binary. You can only be male or female.
Not so straightforward, is it? Question 3. There was a woman in Melbourne who had 2 completely different sets of chromosomes. Some cells in her body comprised XX chromosomes, others were XY. Doctors postulated this was caused when twin eggs in her mother's uterus, one male, one female, fused together. So the question is, should she be classified as a man or a woman?
If only there was a scientific way to differentiate between men and women.
Like a chromosome test.
And now you see the problem. The science part is easy because science just gives us the facts. The difficult decisions about pigeonholing sexes, issuing passports and deciding on bathroom signs has to be argued over by politicians, lawyers and cable TV pundits with shiny teeth. So that's much harder. Which brings us back to this new executive order. I wrote all that before it was issued, so the first thing I did was to look and see how it defined a man and a woman. Female means a person belonging at conception to the sex that produces the large reproductive cell. Male means a person belonging at conception to the sex that produces the small reproductive cell. It's pretty obvious the order was written by a politician and not a biologist, because as any first-year biologist or medical student would have pointed out, it's impossible to know what the sex of a fetus is at conception. For the first 5 weeks, a fetus has no sex. After that, a series of chemical processes sends the fetus in a certain direction. It's what non-scientists could call a biological truth. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I'd be interested to know how a court is going to determine someone's sex by trying to figure out whether he or she was male or female at conception. Not only that, as I pointed out, a lot of men have genetic conditions that mean they can't produce sperm, and a lot of women can't produce eggs. So how do they get classified? Okay, here's my last question. Let's say someone was born a male and has male on his birth certificate and has a penis and sperm and the Y chromosome, then should he be allowed to biologically change his sex? Of course, that's a trick question. There's no medical procedure that can biologically change your sex as it's currently defined. Men who fit these categories, which is what makes them men, can't produce eggs or have female reproductive organs or XX chromosomes through surgery or any other means that we know of. But when it comes to how people feel, well, that's a different story. Now, I'm not talking about men who fake a gender choice in order to get into women's prisons or women's changing rooms. In fact, a lot of men don't even bother with the gender pretense. They walk into women's changing rooms anyway and get away with it. But there are also people who are biologically male or female and genuinely do feel trapped in the wrong sex. Otherwise, why spend a lot of money on surgery and hormones and risk public opprobrium? This has to do with another difference between men and women, which is brain structure. If we're dealing with the ends of the spectrum, the male brain is wired differently to the female brain. This was known long before MRI came along. It was discovered through a research process called marriage. But MRI confirmed it. Brain scans also show that transgender people who are biologically men may have more of what we might call a female brain structure. It's just that with the current state of technology, it's impossible to classify these brain types as one of the indicators of biological sex. So they stay in the realm of psychology and sociology, under the label of gender rather than sex. Maybe one day science will discover a genetic or neurological reason for the transgender brain type, just as we'll discover why some people like listening to Debussy rather than Drake, or prefer gardening to coin collecting. In the meantime, science can't give you the answer to that question, and it certainly can't tell you who should be allowed into bathrooms or sporting events or women's locker rooms, because that's all a matter of opinion. I'm only interested in presenting the facts, which includes any corrections in the video description, so check that out, and then let you form your own opinion. Hey, perhaps that's something cable news could try. Perhaps that's something cable news could try. If you want to support this channel, I'd much rather you show your appreciation by donating to a charity I support, run by doctors that trades forest protection for healthcare. It's resulted in the protection of vital rainforests and better health for poor people who live there. Your contributions have totaled more than $400,000 and helped this charity expand onto 3 continents. Wow, thank you so much.